Hey folks, this is Mike, and I wanted to take a minute and talk about stoplights. In my ideal world, there would only be green lights. I could just sail from point A to point B, no encumbrance. Unfortunately, stoplights are reality. And one of the things that really bothers me is I'll be at a stoplight and the driver in front of me will be texting or playing with their radio or distracted in some way, and they won't notice that the light has turned green. And then at the last second, they glance up, they see the light, they go, but it's too late for me. The light turns red and I have to stop. And it's so frustrating because I have to pay the price for their distraction. And I'm the one stuck waiting through another cycle of lights. Or sometimes even worse, it'll be really late at night. Maybe it's 2, 3 in the morning and I'm driving home. And I get caught at a red light and there is nobody around. It's a four-way intersection. I'm the only car there. A mile in every direction, no cars. And sometimes I'll be sitting there frustrated and I'll just think, this is so stupid. Or maybe I'll think, hey, I could just go and nobody would ever notice. It wouldn't hurt anybody else. But I don't. I stay and I wait for the light to turn green and then I go. And why? And here's the key point of this is I would prefer to live in a society that has stoplights and people obey those stoplights even if they don't feel like it at the moment than I would to live in a society where there weren't stoplights, or perhaps worse, there were stoplights but people just did whatever they felt like, right? And so I think that this is a good metaphor for paying taxes or for regulations in general. Lately, I've been going through this process that required work at the city level, the county level, the state, and the federal level. And it's just like one layer after another, and it's been terribly frustrating in a lot of ways. Just use zoning as an example. I had to go back and forth countless times trying to get a particular business approved. And at times I just could not understand why it had to be such a tedious process. But I step back and I say, well, it is a good thing. I don't want a waste management plant to move in next to my home, right? That would be terrible and that would be much more frustrating and much more disastrous for me. Similarly, I don't want factories and libraries to share parking lots. It would not be a well functioning society. And so, despite the hassle and despite my frustration in the moment, I would still prefer to live in a society that does have zoning regulations and people are compelled to follow those. I use taxes as a second example. I am sure that there are people who abuse food stamps. We've all probably had the experience where you're waiting in line and the person in front of you just has steaks and swordfish and candy, and then they pull out their food stamps or their EBT card and they pay for it that way. And you're like, wow, you glance down at your bell peppers and your bananas that you're going to pay cash for, and something just feels very wrong. So, again, I am sure that there are people who do abuse the food stamp system. That said, I would prefer to live in a society where there is a safety net and that nobody is going to starve, right? The alternative is much worse. Either people starve or they resort to sometimes illicit means in order to satisfy those needs, and that would be worse. And so, despite the hassle, despite the fact that it sometimes will anger me that my tax dollars are used for something that does not directly benefit me, I still prefer to live in a society that does collect taxes and does use them for things like social safety nets. Now, I think it's important to pause here and realize why people have such a problem with taxes. Yeah, they're difficult to fill out, the process is annoying, it's taking our money and remitting it. But I think the deeper problem is that we don't feel like it benefits us. Now, there are other countries that take in a lot of tax dollars, even more than we do, but they end up distributing those tax dollars largely back into society, and it covers things like health care or education or infrastructure projects that are beneficial to the society at large. In America, a lot of times we don't have that. Instead, where does our money go to? Military contractors developing the latest, greatest weapons, building walls on our borders that are largely inefficient, things like that. And of course, a ton of it gets wasted. And so people really feel the burden of paying the taxes, but a lot of times they don't feel all the benefits of the taxes. So I have a proposal that we don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, but we do improve things. With red lights, why not get sensors? And a lot of them do have this now, but why not have sensors at every red light so that if there's no opposing traffic, it turns green and you can go. Make it as efficient as possible. Taxes, can we reform the code some so that it's less difficult to do? Yeah, sure. And more importantly, can we make sure that our tax dollars are distributed back to society in a way that does benefit everybody rather than going to waste or to priorities that benefit a very small number of people but not the society at large? So, at the end of the day, while we can improve things, I still very much prefer to live in a society that has stoplights, has taxes, and has regulations in general. That's all for now. Thanks.